I'm going to give you my favorite series of exercises for how to transform a theme through scalar mapping so that you can take a simple diatonic melody and turn it into something new. I like these exercises because they are immediately musical. Starting with Mary Had a Little Lamb, the whole tone exercises make it sound impressionistic like Debussy, like this. One of the chromatic mappings yields something magical, like it's from a Harry Potter movie. In these exercises, I give really specific guidelines because paradoxically, it's often easier to create ideas when you have less options available to you. Don't take my guidelines as rules though, they're just a framework to get started. This is part of a series on thematic transformation and scalar mapping, so make sure to check out related content. If you feel lost, you may need to watch a different video first before trying out these exercises. To begin, you should pick a diatonic melody, and I'd recommend picking one in major. I also recommend having a keyboard or staff paper nearby so that you can pause this video and try out each exercise before moving on to the next one. The two melodies I'll be transforming are the children's song Mary Had a Little Lamb and the hymn Amazing Grace. For Amazing Grace, I'll be treating the underlying scale as major. For that melody, you could instead consider the underlying scale as pentatonic, but I won't be doing that here. If you don't want to pick your own melody just yet, you can try using Mary Had a Little Lamb. Just pause the video before I show you my solution, and then you can compare what you came up with to what I did. I call the first exercise the heroic minor, because you're going to map a melody to minor, but keep the theme uplifting by using only major chords. This can end up sounding Lydian, but I'll address that later. I'll demo this first with Amazing Grace. Notice that the melody starts with an arpeggiation of the tonic triad. In scale degrees, that means that scale degrees 5, 1, and 3 are prominent, and the opening interval of a fourth, which is +3 in scale steps, helps make this theme identifiable. For this exercise, you'll need to take the melody and map it onto the parallel minor, so that's F minor in this case. Make sure that if you don't want to map every single note, you'll be more strict with scale degrees and intervals that are on strong beats. When harmonizing this exercise, I'm going to take away some of the heaviness of minor by offsetting it with major harmonies. For notes that seem important, try to have them be the third or seventh of whichever chord that you pick. For this melody, the note F is very prominent, so I'll harmonize that with a D-flat major chord to make it the third of the chord. Then when C is on a downbeat, I'll make that an A-flat major chord. Here's what I came up with French horn in the melody and strings as accompaniment. If you want to try this on your own with Mary Had a Little Lamb before seeing what I did, pause the video now. Here's the original melody in C major. Now I'll map it to C minor, and I'm going to pick some harmonies aiming for important notes to be thirds or sevenths of major chords. Using this as a lead sheet, I'll play through it on piano and add in a transcription below. won't disagree if you tell me that this is not really a mapping in minor anymore as much as a mapping to the Lydian mode, which is like a major scale that has a raised fourth. That's because once I picked the harmonies, A flat started to sound more like a tonic than C. Keep in mind that when you conceive music in order to compose it, it isn't always the same as the way you might conceive music when you're listening to it. This next exercise happens to be a very effective way to start to sound like Debussy. For the melody, you'll map it onto a whole tone scale. For the harmony, use only dominant seventh or dominant ninth chords, but each time you have one of those chords, omit the fifth so that the notes of the chords correspond to notes found in a whole tone scale. One of the reasons these are great chords is that they sound somewhat tonal, but they have all of their notes coming from the whole tone scale. Using Mary Had a Little Lamb for this exercise almost feels like cheating, since I only need to change one note to make it go whole tone. If you want to try this on your own with Mary Had a Little Lamb, pause the video now. Here's what I came up with. The octatonic exercise can sound moody and unsettling. At a fast tempo, can also create tension, like in an action scene. Start by mapping the melody to an octatonic pitch collection, which is an 8-note scale alternating whole and half steps. There will be 2 mapping options for your melody, depending whether the scale step above the first note will be a half step or a whole step. Do both and pick the one that you think will work better. Because my new scale will have a different number of scale degrees per octave, thinking about my melody as a set of scale degrees to transfer to the new scale doesn't always work so well. So I'll be thinking more about preserving the intervals between notes and measuring those intervals in scale steps. For the harmony, use only triads or seventh chords that are available in the octatonic collection. You may want to make a little chart of chords available. Here's the chart I made for the octatonic collection I'll be using. I'm going to use a solo piano texture in the style of Theodore Shapiro's main titles to the show Severance. Even though that theme is not octatonic, the first chords are triads with their roots a tritone apart, and those 2 chords can be found in a single octatonic scale, but not in a single diatonic scale. So that's part of why I've gone in this direction. I'll make a repeating harmonic progression over a repeated C sharp in the bass, although I will change the pattern subtly when needed. Some of the rhythms will get adjusted too, but when I do change the rhythm, I'm going to try to preserve notes that land on strong beats to maintain a little of the original character. Here's an octatonic version of Amazing Grace, and I'll use a felt piano with added reverb to capture the sound of Theodore Shapiro's main theme. I think this is delightfully unsettling. Remember that in music, as in life, it's good to take some risks and make things weird sometimes. For the final exercise, the melody gets mapped to a chromatic scale, and there are 2 harmonization options that I'll give you. The easier option is what I call the magical version. For the melody, you're going to map it onto a chromatic scale, and for the harmony, use all parallel minor triads in close position below the melody. If you want to try this with Mary Had a Little Lamb on your own, pause the video now. Here's Mary Had a Little Lamb mapped onto a chromatic scale. Now I can take my new melody and pick whether every note will be the root, third, or fifth for the parallel minor triads voiced below it. In Hedwig's theme, John Williams makes the melody the fifth for most of the triads, so that's what I'll be doing here. At the end, I added a little arpeggiation and downward chromatic motion. Remember, my guidelines are not rules. They're just designed to get you moving in a musical direction. And feel free to trust your ears for how to diverge from them. Here's what those parallel minor triads sound like on Solo Celesta. I want to orchestrate this in full Harry Potter style, so I'm going to take those minor triads and put them in the brass section and double the melody on glockenspiel. Then I'll add woodwind runs and some fast string lines to go along with it. For the string lines, when the melody sits on a note for a while, the strings will arpeggiate the harmony there, but when the melody moves quickly, the strings can double the line. The second way that you might harmonize a chromatic mapping is what I'll call creepy counterpoint. Stop thinking so much about chords and add an independent line instead. The style of counterpoint is up to you and might depend on the melody that you've mapped, but try to have the line imitate some of the melodic shapes of the mapped melody. Here's Amazing Grace mapped to the chromatic scale, and now I'll add some counterpoint inspired by Bela Bartok. In order to make this sound imitative and conversational, I'm going to take this opening 4-note idea and have it pervade the counterpoint part. And when it comes to the intervals between the two parts, I'm looking to have a lot of variety there. Once you get comfortable with these exercises, there's still so much more you can try out. There are lots more scales, like the pentatonic scale, the acoustic scale, or all the scales that you find in South Indian ragas, like Maya Malavagola. Go explore, take some risks, and be creative.